We play and call it work.
Hey everybody, Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to this week's Rules You Got Wrong. Now you might notice that this came out on Saturday, not on Friday. It's because I'm actually changing the show to go on Saturdays. I realize we already have a lot that goes out on Fridays with the sit and talk and with our battle reports. And Saturday, right now, all we had was the Old World Wars. So all this is going to come out every Saturday from now on. So we didn't forget, we just changed the date. So this is the show where we go over the rules from the battle reports that we did roughly in the past week. Just get the ones when we happen to record. If we miss one because of timing, then we'll get it in next week's Rules You Got Wrong. And we talk about the rules mistakes that you guys think that we did, and we talk about whether you're right or whether you're wrong. And this way we can learn better on how to get the rules right, and so can you, as it goes both ways there. It's really easy with the complicated rules of 40K and all these other games to get things wrong, or to think that people get things wrong, just because they're very, very complex. So I'm going to be starting this show off, and I'm going to be talking about my two games, Ultramarines versus Eldar Flyer Battle Report, and then Salamanders versus Necrons. These are my first two beat map bat reps, and so I decided to show off the new Death from the Skies supplement. And there was somebody in here who asked, what's going on with this? Is this override Codex rules? And the answer is, technically, the Death from the Skies supplement is not a supplement. It is an update. It replaces the Flyer rules from 40K, and it replaces all the Codex entries. Now, for the most part, the Codex entries have stayed the same, except they added Pursuit, Agility, it's all sorts of stuff. So it's actually changed quite fundamentally in how you play. Now, that doesn't stop you and your friends from not using it and just using the regular rules. But as of right now, technically, the official rules are the new Death from the Sky. So technically, you're required to own it. Not everybody's happy about that, but who's ever totally happy with the way the rules are? And so I'm going to be going through here. And also, just another note, there has been a draft of the FAQ for 40K that Games Workshop put on their Facebook page. It's not official yet. And I know some people are like, well, it's official because it's Games Workshop. The thing is, it's a draft. There's actually contradictions within it. And it's not published on their website. There's actually the old FAQ there. So we're still not using it. But some of those issues might come up where people are like, hey, but I thought you can't do this. And it's just that they're reading the new FAQ and we're not yet using it. So we'll try to make it clear in our battle reports when we do switch over to it. But we're going to be waiting for Games Workshop to officially release it, because there's several things in there that I really hope that they don't keep. And that's a whole other video to go over. And so just make sure if you want to leave rules comments in our battle reports that you put a timestamp in there as well. So start with episode 1 of Beat Map Bat Rep Season 4, Ultramarines versus Eldar Flyer Battle. Kega, Captain Cyrus, don't Stalkers have Interceptor as well as Skyfire? Or did they change Skyfire in the new book? They definitely do have Interceptor, which is why I was able to shoot at those flyers as soon as they came in, thus ruining that battle report, as many of you pointed out, and as I totally 100% agree with. I hadn't played as Stalkers in a long time, and the last time I used them, they sucked. And so I didn't put two and two together that when those guys came on, and the funny thing is, I'm like, I'm going to bring Stalkers. I'll just bring a Stalker. But then the only way to bring Stalkers was to bring them as part of the detachment, and the only way to do that is there's a formation, which is 1 unit of Hunters and 1 unit of Stalkers, and the requirement is that you have to have at least 2 Stalkers. And so it kind of escalated without me really thinking about it as it all happened. I'm like, okay, if to bring the Stalkers, I got to bring a Hunter. Okay. Oh, and I had to bring 2 Stalkers. Well, okay. And yeah, when his flyers came on and I fired, I think if they didn't have Interceptor, it wouldn't have been that big a deal. I think he would have been able to do the damage he needed to do, and it wouldn't have made a huge difference in the game. He also got pretty unlucky, and I got pretty lucky with my shots too. I got 10 out of 12 hits on a 3+. That's like hitting on a 2+. And yeah, it just totally annihilated him. Now, mind you, I think they still would do well against it. If I could go back and replay it, I would either only bring 1 Stalker some other way, or I'd say no Stalkers and bring some sort of other anti-air, because I had no anti-air with my aircraft, because none of mine are fighters. So I needed something on the ground that was anti-air in order to deal with his flyers. Otherwise, he would have just flown around and fired his bomber destroyer weapons and destroyed everything on my side. It wouldn't have been that much of a fun game either. But your question is, don't they have Interceptor as well as Skyfire? I think you're asking that because you're wondering why I snap fired at ground targets. And the answer to that is Interceptor plus Skyfire no longer gives the option. In the 6th edition rules, if you had both Interceptor and Skyfire, you could choose whether you fired Skyfire or not. But in the new rules, it does not say that. They removed that paragraph or that sentence. So they still can only snap fire at ground targets. Now, when I say ground targets, there is another mistake I made. I fired it as jet bikes at full ballistic skill. And that was a mistake. That was mixed up because in the new Death in the Skies book, they redefine what ground targets and air targets are, or not redefine, but they better define. They say ground targets include this, 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 and air targets include the typical skimmers, flying monsters, creatures, other flyers, and jet bikes. And so in my mind, I was thinking Skyfire is against air targets, but they actually have a separate list of rules for what Skyfire can target. It's really kind of unnecessary. You should either include jet bikes and air targets and allow them to be Skyfired at, or not include them in air targets and not be allowed to Skyfire at. So having that one thing in there, it's just jet bikes. We just have to remember, Skyfire does not work against jet bikes, but jet bikes count as air targets when it comes to everything that is in the Death from the Skies book, except Skyfire. So it's kind of dumb. I think it's an oversight, but rules is written. It is the way it is. Marzilius, Elder Rangers have Shrouded, not Stealth, so they would have 2 up cover, 4 from the ruins, adding 2 from Shrouded. Yes, that isn't a mistake my opponent made, and I did not know the Rangers well enough to know it's Shrouded. When he said they had Stealth, that sounded right, and I didn't challenge him on that because it didn't even pop in my mind that that could have been wrong. So you're right. They would have been 2 up cover the entire time. Big Bang A1, Matt, you forgot your bolters on the tacticals around the 39-minute mark. There was a small chance the tactical squad could have glanced a skimmer to death. A 6 would have been a glance. See, I thought his armor was 12 at that point, but I forgot to go look at that. The second tactical squad that chucked a crack grenade could have poured another 16 bolter shots into the fire dragons. Now, that's not true. You all have to target the same unit. You can't have one crack grenade thrown at the vehicle and then the rest of them fire at the fire dragons. Oh, note, on my last comment, I meant the second squad that chucked a frag grenade, not a crack grenade. See, I thought I did fire the bolters when I threw the frag grenade, but maybe it's because I don't know, not sure. Also, wouldn't the Haywire grenade pack still have hit the Bastion? Yes, it did hit the Bastion, but it's not a Haywire grenade pack. That's what we thought it was. I think I called it that at some point, but it turns out it's just a Strength 4 AP4 blast, and that's kind of boring compared to me thinking it was Haywire. Zero Max K0, the Swooping Hawks, were in the Aspect Host, right? Models from this formation can reroll failed morale, penning, and fear tests. See, that part I didn't know. He told me that the Aspect formation gave him +1 ballistic skill, and I didn't look it up. I usually do look up each formation that my opponent brings, but for some reason I didn't think to look at that one. Ham Grenade Pack Blast should have gone back 2 inches. Exarch has ballistic skill 6, and he can choose to have the Exarch throw. That is true. He chose to throw it with somebody else, and I didn't even pop in my mind that he should have thrown it with the Exarch. He would have had a nice high ballistic skill, and yeah, that would have been good. I don't know if that would have made much of a difference in the game though, because it would just hit more of the Marines, and it's only Strength 4 AP4, so it's a mistake for sure. Fine Slow, Matt, beginning of your turn 2, you forgot to do the new dogfight phase. That's actually wrong. The dogfight phase happens at the beginning of the game round, not at each game turn or player turn. And so you only do it once for the entire round. And so, for example, at the beginning of turn 2, if you both have flyers in reserve, and you do your dogfight phase and you both still have flyers, nobody has air superiority. And so then let's say this player goes and their flyers come in from reserve, and then this player goes, he's the only one with flyers in reserve, but he still doesn't have air superiority because that was determined in the dogfight phase of the entire round. So that's important to remember. It's not once per turn, it's once per game round. Fine Slow, at 121 you got your lookout stirs the wrong way around. You said the 1 to 3s passed and the 4 to 6s failed. Yeah, I'm not sure what what medication I was on right there, because it's definitely 4+ to pass the lookout stirs. 10 Moth 13. Warp Spiders have Flicker Jump. Could have helped for shooting, I think. Don't play Eldar though. You're right, they did. When I fired at him, he could have Flicker Jumped, possibly getting him out of line of fire and saved more of them. So he did forget that. That's not a rules mistake per se, because just forgetting to do something isn't a mistake rules-wise. It's just more a tactical mistake or just kind of forgetting something. Pure Strain. Are Devastators relentless? Now, Devastators aren't relentless, but Centurion Devastators, which you specify, are relentless. Because you move, then fire the 5 salvo rounds when I think it's only supposed to be 3. Yeah, they are relentless. I think they're slow and purposeful to be exact. So no overwatching, no running, just firing the 5 shots all the time. The Uninvisible Man, 1. Just a rules question on combat squads. The rule says a unit split into combat squads therefore is now 2 separate units for all game purposes, including calculating the total number of units in the army and determining the number of units you can place in reserve. Can you therefore combat squad in a unit that is part of a formation and still keep the formation's bonuses? As in you have 3 tactical squads in a demi company, you combat squad them, so do you now have 6 tactical squads, which would be illegal for the purposes of creating a demi company? Or do the rules only refer to them being separate on the units on the battlefield itself, as well as reserves, kill points, holding objectives, etc.? I can see how you could argue that it ruins the formation by them doing it, but it doesn't make any sense for us to assume that by going into combat squads, it ruins the formation, because it says 3 tactical squads, and tactical squads are allowed to split off into 2 squads, or 2 combat squads each. And I can't imagine that Games Workshop would try to be saying in this formation that you can't split your tactical squads off, because you have to realize as well, thinking of the fluff-wise, the Gladius Strike Force, and all the other ones that use it, but let's think of the Gladius Strike Force, that's the Ultramarines. That's their detachment. I know other ones can use it, but they wrote that detachment. So the tactical squads being able to combat squad, that's a very Ultramarine thing to do. I realize all Space Marines can do it, but the Ultramarines are the ones that are like, this is the way you do Space Marines. And so if they're like, this is a demi company, oh, and you're not allowed to combat squad, that doesn't seem very Ultramarine-y. Now that's hardly an argument in favor of it, because we're just talking fluff here. But I would be 99.99999% sure that Games Workshop was not intending on breaking a formation by you combat squatting them. There's probably other examples of things that are allowed to split off and do things, and it wouldn't wreck the formation. So if a formation says a tactical squad, and a tactical squad said it can combat squad, I can't see how that would break it at all. But I could see how that could be brought up, because it's not 100% clear, but I would mix rules as written with rules as intended and easily come up with that. Mirko Trio, hey Matt, I know you said the FAQs are not in effect still, so this isn't a rule error, but when you ignored the facts rule, you usually said if it is. So I'm telling you this, just in case you didn't notice it. Only 1 grenade in close combat now. So actually the Hawks ran away, so this didn't even happen, just something I want you to notice. Yeah, that's one of the things I hope they don't stick with in the FAQ, is that they basically say, we already knew that only 1 grenade in the shooting phase, but a lot of people would argue, and it was an argument, whether you could use as many grenades as you wanted in a close combat phase. And we play it that, yeah, you can use them all, because why would a Tau Fire Warrior squad pay for EMP grenades separately if only one of them can use it? Would you really want to pay just for redundancy in case the guy that had the EMP grenade died? Now there are some squads, especially in 30K, where you pay one time for the entire squad to get it, so you could argue, well, that shows that they only want you to use it once. But I would counter-argue saying, well, 30K is all about penalizing min squads, and that's why it's like, for example, it's 150 points to get a tactical squad, and it's only 100 points to double that size, that tactical squad. So they do a lot of that, where they charge you a huge surplus for the minimum size squad, but by the time you go to a full size squad, it brings the points per guy down a lot. So them saying you pay once for the entire squad to get outfitted with melta bombs or whatever makes sense for 30K, because that fits their mantra of penalizing minimum size squads. They want bigger squads. Whereas in 40K, everybody likes to min-max by having small groups of guys better for objective holding and formations and everything else like that. And so I hope they don't keep that. But yeah, if the FAQ goes out exactly the way it is now, only 1 grenade in close combat. So that would be really sad, especially for crack grenade wielding Space Marines going up against monstrous creatures or vehicles. It makes it much more hard and much more difficult for them to deal with that kind of stuff. Champion Logan, something I keep noticing as an error is the re-rolling failed rolls with the grav amp. This isn't the case, as page 194 of the Space Marine Codex has it state the bearer can re-roll the result. Since there is precedence of this meaning a full re-roll in other codices, the full to wound or armor pen shouldn't be re-rolled. I actually agree. I looked it up because I'm like, that seems odd. It doesn't say it can re-roll failed wounding or armor pen. It just says to re-roll the result. And there are other codices I'm thinking of. I think it's Fate Weaver, who can just, or there's somebody that in the Demons Codex who could just re-roll, and it came out that what they meant by that is because it was like a time thing where he got to reverse time, and so he didn't just get to re-roll the failed ones, he just re-rolled the whole thing. The same thing with like Tigurius's, to Chief Librarian Tigurius of the Ultramarines, he can re-roll failed psychic tests. He doesn't get to re-roll the individual dice, he just re-rolls all of them. So I think you're right. It's too bad because it makes them a little less powerful. I know that people aren't going to be crying about the Space Marine Centurion Devastators or grav amps being less powerful, because they are very powerful. But I think you are correct. Gingerson, the warp spiders at 43-42 should have not fallen back. The Exarch was still alive, so the squad had iron resolve. At that point, the Exarch was dead. He was further out front, and he did die, so they did fall back because of that. Stephen P., you can't reroll a 1 on that scatter dice that frag missile shot into the Rangers. You can only reroll to hit rolls of 1, not scatter. There's a big argument to that, and the new FAQ will clarify this, because some people were saying, because if you look under scatters and blasts and rerolling, it says if you can reroll to hit, then you can reroll your scatter. So essentially it becomes twin linked. So people were arguing that preferred enemy, which allowed you to reroll 1s, that lets you reroll your scatter. I didn't agree with this at first, but then there was a lot of arguments put forward. And then I think even the ITC FAQ basically clarified saying, yes, you can do that. And so we went with that. And I can't remember if it was the ITC FAQ or if it was just enough arguments were made that I'm like, okay, that seems to be what people want. And so we did it that way. So being able to reroll 1s in our rules meant you could reroll the scatter. Now, with the new FAQ, if it stays exactly the way it is, they clarify, saying, no, that is not the case. You have to be able to reroll everything in order to reroll your blast, or your scatter. So you're right, and maybe you're wrong with the pre-FAQ. I'm not sure. That was always argued, though. Cap'n Crump. Can you elect for a flyer to enter into hover mode? I didn't think you could. Is that a rules error or part of the new flyer supplement? It is neither a rules error. It's technically a new flyer supplement, but it's actually part of the regular rules. If you look under hover, it says it can choose. Where it can't choose is if it goes into ongoing reserve, it must come back in zooming. But when it comes in from reserve the first time, it can choose to come in hover or zooming mode. And so you can double check that. It's actually in the main rule book. You don't even need the Death from the Skies. Look under hover, and you'll see that it says that. And then if you look under re-entering airspace or exiting airspace, then it talks about having to come back in and zooming, even if it left in hover mode. So that is interesting right there. Which also means you could leave in hover mode, which I've never really thought. It's just always been like a zoom, you go off. But I guess if you couldn't leave in hover mode, you could always just lift up in the zooming mode and fly off. So unless you're, yeah, whatever. James Patrick, isn't the grav amp just re-rolling to hit against vehicles, not re-rolling wounds against anything? No, it's re-rolling re-roll the result of armor pen and wounding as well. So it works against both. James Petit, at 1918, does Skyfire work against jet bikes? No. That was my mistake thinking, and still, anyways. Joe Woods, did the comms relay change in Death in the Skies? I always thought they allowed you to re-roll your reserves. Now you're talking about the comms relay that was on top of one of the bastions. And the answer to the question is no, it has not changed, but that was not a comms relay. It was not a bastion upgrade comms relay. We just used the same thing. There was actually something in that specific mission called a comms nexus that had me elect one of my buildings to be a comms nexus. And while that one was still alive, I could just automatically pass or fail my reserve rolls. So I chose to just show that by putting the comms relay thing on there. So it hasn't changed, but that's not what it was. So that's why you thought that I got that wrong. So now let's go into game 2. This was in the vault. This was the Necrons versus Salamanders. Now some of the rules brought up were the same ones from game 1, and so I'm not going to go over those. And we'll just talk about the ones that are new. Starting out with the DS69, just for talk, does the Aegis defense line now impassable terrain as for the new FAQs? I mean by raw point of view. The new FAQ says walls are now impassable, but I don't think they meant that for Aegis defense lines. I know some people could try to get their way through that, but that just seems kind of ridiculous. So I'd say a definite no. About Death from the Skies, I think the rules inside are really annoying and time-wasting. In my opinion, we don't need a 5th phase in the game. That phase doesn't take that long. I agree. I don't like the dogfight phase. But I haven't played it enough yet to really make a final judgment on that for myself. Jay Smith, great bat rep, love the scenario. One thing the Dreadnought should have consolidated after destroying the Necron barge, which could have saved it hitting front armor instead of rear and maybe get into cover. Can't do that. If you charge a vehicle, you cannot consolidate after destroying it because you're not locked in combat with it. Although we are going to talk about something else when I get to somebody else's question about that. But the Dreadnought charged, when he destroys it, he cannot consolidate. Zero Max K0, vectored afterburners on the Talons increase your jinx saves by 1 when hovering, by the by. You're right. So if I got them into that 1 formation, then the front one would actually, in hover mode, that front one would have a 2-up jinx save, which would be kind of cool. Redbeard 99, Big Red Rulebook, or the Big Red Book states they may choose not to move after the run roll is made, but still count as having run. So Matt shouldn't have been able to, after seeing his run distance of 1 at the Warriors, decided to shoot at the Storm Talon instead. You're absolutely right, except you're absolutely wrong. You're right rules in the main rule book, but this specific mission said that I can fire snapshots after running, turbo boosting, and flat outing. It's supposed to make up for the fact that you're so far back from your opponent. See, I kind of mitigated that by just transporting my guys in. But in this mission specifically, you can snap fire after moving. So you saw me snap fire, but I was firing at a flyer, so you probably thought I was snap firing because I was firing at a flyer, but I was snap firing because I actually ran as well. Draco 765, invasion beams no longer pick up troops. That was the 5th edition book. And being a zooming flyer, you cannot hover to embark. You're actually right. And I don't think it was 5th edition, I think that was just last edition where they had an FAQ out for the Necrons that's saying that they could re-embark. So it was an FAQ that changed that. And so that's why it was stuck in my mind, even though the main book doesn't say it. But then I looked it up, and that Necron FAQ is gone. So rules is written, I can't re-embark inside of a Necron night site. That would have changed the game, obviously, because I wouldn't have been able to get my guys over there. So interesting right there. Cackling Goblin X, now this is the Dreadnought thing I was talking about. At the 56-minute mark, you discuss the Dreadnought not being able to avoid exposing the rear armor. I'm guessing because he wants to fire its weapons first. Can he just change his facing while charging? I don't know if he has to keep the same facing, but I can't find anything about it in the rules. And you're right. When a walker charges, it doesn't say that he can't charge backwards. And I'm serious about this. Obviously, if he charges backwards, it opens up his rear armor to Overwatch. Although I guess you could say that you charge forward and then you pivot it right before you get to them, and then because you fire your Overwatch before you start the charge, so it's whatever facing you had to begin with. But technically, where's my? There it is. I'm going to double check that one more time for walkers and charging. But facing in this game doesn't matter for regular infantry. So when you have a vehicle act like infantry, you're not going to have wording in the rulebook that says the infantry model must face the thing that's charging. The War Machine would definitely do that because the arcs matter. But here, that one doesn't come up. So unless there's a specific thing written for walkers, I'm going to double check that because I forgot to look that one up before I started this video. It says transports, flyers, chariots, skimmers, walkers. Okay. So moving walkers, they charge self-edge, just as infantry can. Blah, 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 blah. They have a facing. When they fire Overwatch, I know their facing doesn't matter. They can charge move. They fight like infantry in close combat, except you always hit their front arc. Yeah, you're right. There's nothing in here that says they can't charge backwards. So yeah, he could have charged backwards after firing. So he move and face forward, fire his weapons, and then charge like this. So his front arc would be facing the back. So even though he can't consolidate, he could have fixed that. That seems really weird, but definitely, I could not argue that whatsoever. Rules as intended wouldn't even fit there because I can't find any precedent that would show something like that not being something a Games Workshop would like. It feels weird, but whatever. If rules is written, definitely would be able to get away with that. So, and you're right, you even say, plus I haven't seen people care about it while playing, not even here on MiniWarGaming, like a soul grinder turning sideways. And you're right, I've even done that. So I haven't even thought it's a problem to be like, okay, well, I can get them in like this. So, yeah, it's totally allowed. Semper Steel, Matt, one thing you missed. After the Stern Guard flamed your warriors in the Ghost Arc, you could regenerate D3 warriors per turn. You're right, I forgot that. Gadam's Necron Flyer is an attack aircraft, so you can only fire snapshots at the Talon. His Talons were hovering at the time, so they become fast skimmers, and so I can fire at them at my full ballistic skill. Not with the +1 ballistic skill from Strafing Run from the mission, because he does not count as a ground target. Samaris, Salamander reroll armor penetration rolls with the Flamers 2. So we did end up doing that later in the game, but yeah, when he fired his heavy flamer, the rear armor of my Ghost Arc, he could have rerolled to try to get that 6. So it didn't matter in the end because the Dreadnought just went in there and killed it, but yeah, could have been. Master Crafty, 53 minutes, the Assault with the Chaplain and the Overlord. You gave him a reroll for Zealot, but forgot that he, as Salamander's character, he would have a free Master Crafted weapon anyway, rerolling a die every turn. Yeah, I think he forgot that for the Chaplain at that time. So, because Salamanders, their doctrines is that every character can upgrade one weapon to Master Crafted absolutely free. So you're absolutely right about that. Okay, that's it for me. So let's jump to the next person and talk more about the rules they got wrong, or didn't.
Alright guys, welcome to my portion of the Warhammer 40k rules you got wrong for this week. I decided to have not one of the guys read. I got Dave White here.
I'm his beautiful assistant. I'm the one who does all the getting sword in half and stuff.
I figured that the easiest way, I'm loving the segment because I am getting all my mistakes corrected in probably the best way possible. The only way to make this better is to have somebody with a condescending accent.
It's not my fault I'm condescending.
Accuse me of the mistakes I made.
Yeah.
But no, all joking aside, let's jump right into it. So we're going to start off with Necrons versus Tau, episode 45. We'll read through a couple of the comments, paraphrase a couple of them to kind of make them make a little bit more sense here. But Dave, why don't you get us started?
Okay. So the first comment is by DT or DT.
Yep.
So 805, he puts a wound on the Riptide and put the dice on 5. Don't Riptides only have 5 wounds? So shouldn't he have shouldn't he have shown a 4?
Right. Riptides are only 5 wound space. You're right.
Okay. Then there is the crisis suits should not have rerolled to hit. The command node and sensor suite specifically state that they don't work in Overwatch. The Wraith could have survived, charged the crisis suits, and might have swept with some good rolls. And that was by Frozochrone.
Right. They do not allow you to use it. It says it right in the rules that you can't use it for Overwatch, and it's my fault for not rereading and double checking so.
Okay, next one by Teldonator. These are such great names. This is fun. Around 750, the Riptide attempts to activate its Nova Reactor. Codex, page 123, states that the Nova Reactor must be activated at the start of the movement phase, and also you don't get any saves if it fails. Feel no pain still applies though.
Right. So with the Nova Reactor, you do have to activate in the movement. So that was done incorrect. And then, as far as saves, it specifically says no saves allowed. I think there's a couple people back and forth in the comments about whether Feel No Pain's technically a save or not. And it's not technically a save.
Unless it gets FAQ'd in there.
Right. So as of right now, there's no FAQ stating that Feel No Pain is a save. So yeah, he still gets to Feel No Pain, but there's a couple people back and forth on that. So I wanted to make sure that comment was in there.
So there's a few from Skulls with extra Zs. You can't charge from swooping. You can't charge on the turn you are swooping. Is basically
right. He changed from
swooping and then charged on the same turn.
Yep, and you can't do that. Basic rule. I missed it.
Then he also asked jetpack infantry running 3d6 at 5530. Jetpack are treated as regular infantry when falling back. Big rulebook movement summary in the book.
Same thing. 2d6 guys. My mistake.
Then failed. Oh, that's the failed Nova Reactor again. Tau's turn 3 and 4, it was mentioned that the Tau get coordinated fire. With the list being played, they do not get it. That is a benefit from the Tau Hunter contingent.
Right. Looking back at the list with hindsight, it was not a Hunter contingent. He took at the very least, he took an extra HQ choice. His intention was to play Hunter contingent, and that's how it was presented to me originally, so that's why we went with that rule. But onus is on me because I did not double check that was a proper list for Hunter contingent.
Okay, next we got a couple from Daniel TMU. The Challenger targeted your Wraiths with an illegal unit of Fire Warriors because one of the models in his unit fired the gun rig at a different unit and nobody in the squad had the split fire special rule. He should never have been able to target your Wraiths.
Yep. So we did do that incorrect. Should not have been able to split that fire up that way.
Next, you said that the broadside's rare off as AP1, so +1 to the pen result, but your Ghost Arc is open topped, so with AP1 it should have been 3 to the pen result, and your Ghost Arc should have been stunned, not shaken. Also, you forgot Living Metal ignores shaken results.
So that's a combination of two different things. Number one, I'm a dirty Necron cheating player.
You are.
I forgot open top, guys. So yeah, it should have been a total of +3 to the roll. And not only am I kind of a cheating player, apparently, I'm a bad player and forgot my own roll for Living Metal. So yep, just honest mistakes all around, guys.
Next one is Vertalar. Retread the rules for resolving wounds in the shooting phase and the rules for allocating hits from blasts. Every time the Necrons took wounds from the Riptide blast, you do not allocate hits correctly. Do not look out, sir, from each character as if they've been hit. Only start to allocate hits to characters when they are the closest to the firing model or the closest to the center of a barrage attack.
I was under the impression while playing Damien that that was a barrage.
But it's not.
It's definitely not.
No.
So yep, did that wrong. It is just a regular old blast, not a barrage, as I had understood it.
Okay, next is from Healed Healed Seeker. There you go. Also, forgot to add Hyperphase swords are AP3, not AP2. I swear English is my first language.
Yeah, really, eh? Yep, they're AP3. It was an oversight. I must have glanced at the AP of the War Scythe when I was double checking the rules. So.
Or you're just assuming Necrons kill everybody, which is.
The Necrons are a very weak, underpowered army.
They
that needs
are.
all the help they can get.
They're misunderstood as well.
As am I. I'm really a nice guy. No, I'm not.
And the last one's from Jack Williams 2. I wonder what happened to Jack Williams 1. The ballistic skill of a Riptide is 3, so the blast would have moved 3 inches.
It's Jack Williams 2 days ago.
Oh, it's 2 days ago. I thought it was Jack Williams 2.
Yeah, the way that we print them off. So yeah, ballistic skill on Riptide is 3. You're right, not 4. So
the next one is...
Yep. You want to go ahead and read off what the next one is?
Okay, this is our battle report. So now you can all get mad at me as well, not just him. Because I done goofed.
As much as we joke about it, one thing I've noticed in the comment section, and this isn't everybody, but the vast majority of people that are leaving comments, they tend to be the rules mistakes. They're constructive, they're well written, they're giving me timestamps. You guys rock.
Yeah.
Now, everybody else that's not doing those things, you're still pretty awesome for helping me out. But big props to the MiniWarGaming community and the gaming community overall, because there's the positivity that's not always there that's coming through. So I appreciate this stuff immensely. You guys don't know how helpful it all is.
And I appreciate it too, because there was a bunch of comments that helped me out, because I never remember some of the rules for my Mechanicum, because they got so many.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll get started. So this is AdMech versus AdMech 40k Battle Report episode 46, and the first one is from Mr. Felix Martin. The AdMech is a metric ton of special rules, not an imperial ton. There's a distinct difference there. It takes a couple of games to get used to them and a couple more to find the right way to use them tactically. Infiltrators have stealth. Cybernetic Cohort has split fire and canticles. In the night fight with the robots, the Castellans could have smashed to be strength 10 AP2. And Josh's infiltrators could have outflanked instead of picnicking in a grassy field.
I love the comment, because there was a couple of rules things in here we decided to leave the rest in because they're somewhat tactical things. And even though this is primarily a rules you got wrong, it's a way for me to address the bat rep in a certain way. So the starting off was...
The infiltrators have stealth.
Yep, infiltrators have stealth. I think we missed that in the very beginning and then caught it partway through. But yep, you're right. That would have helped probably from the very get-go.
And then the next one was the Cybernetic Cohort gets split fire and canticles.
So canticles, yes. Split fire, not quite. They've got a very similar rule where it's the... was it Datasmiths?
Datasmiths and the Dominus counts for it.
They can give up their shooting to allow the robots to essentially split fire. So it's kind of nitpicking a little bit. So yeah, technically they are able to do that, but it's not exactly split fire.
No, because they can shoot up to like 4 different units, because for each guy they can shoot a different target. So it's actually way better than split fire.
Yeah, it's better than the split fire universal special rule. But yeah, they do have the capability to divide their shooting up, if you will.
Which is handy.
Yep.
So then there was the night fight with the robots. They could have smashed.
Yep, and they probably should have smashed. Not so much a rules mistake as an oversight on my part. So.
And then you could have outflanked, which was a strategy.
Could have outflanked, which would have been probably smarter. I just wasn't very fancy.
That's okay. They'll forgive you, Josh. Then Dummy Springs asked, why was the knight re-rolling at 1404? I don't remember the knight being twin-linked, and I thought that the canticles only affect units from the Cult Mechanicus book.
Special rule called Dave White's a jerk.
Yeah, it's not. So my army was the War Convocation, which was in a White Dwarf. I cannot tell you the number of the White Dwarf, but basically what it does is it gives everybody in the army canticles of the Omnissiah, and then all your upgrades are free, basically, and the... no gets hot on plasma weapons. So basically that's why. It's because I was using the Jerk Mechanicum list.
Using the War Convocation.
Yeah.
Which, again, not a rules thing. A couple of people, I think, must have either skipped part of the video. I asked him to bring that.
Yeah. He told me to. I didn't do it. I wasn't being mean.
Wasn't surprised. No. David was so kind as to come up with a couple different lists. Which was my list and his list. We had to tweak him a little bit when he got here, And then I said, because the intention wasn't for it to be Mechanicum versus Mechanicum, but we hadn't really done much, so what the hey, let's do it, and I told him to play the better list.
Yeah, it was him, not me. Okay, and then Rob Shaw asks, Ruststalkers have 2 wounds each as well as Infiltrators.
Yep, I think the major thing, yeah, they definitely have 2 wounds. There was some instant death in there.
I think what that was from, because the Ruststalkers were fighting the Castellan robots, so Infiltrators and Ruststalkers are only toughness 3, so the Castellans were instant deathing them all.
Yep.
So it might have looked like they only had 1 wound, but it was because they're not very tough.
Yep.
So, and then the last one is War Convocation makes any relics you take free, but does still not allow you to take more than 1 relic per army.
So with everything we've taken a look at, I can't find the relic rule anywhere as far. Now it says you can't take multiples of the same relic, and
Only one person can have 1 relic. They can't
Yep.
have a bag of relics.
everyone go with this big bag of relics.
Yeah, can't do that.
But I'm not seeing anything anywhere that's saying that you cannot have multiple relics in the army. I very well might be incorrect on that. If I am, give me a page reference.
In the rulebook or in the Cult Mechanicus book.
Either or, because we took a look through and weren't able to find anything. But hey, you know what? Maybe my search skills weren't the best out there. So guys, that wraps up my portion of this week's Rules You Got Wrong. Thanks again. This is super duper helpful. If at any point you also want to shoot me an email direct, whether it be tactical advice or rules specific stuff you want me to bring up, because anything that I get in an email I will address on this show as well. Josh at MiniWarGaming.com. Shoot me an email. You guys rock.
Bye.
That's it for today. Thanks for watching this week's Rules You Got Wrong 40K edition. Make sure you leave your comments below in this one telling us if you disagree with any of the rules we talked about in this video. And of course, as usual, leave your rules, mistakes, comments in all our battle reports and we'll get to them. Because we definitely want to do it better. We want to make sure we get the rules right. Thanks for watching. Happy wargaming.